There comes a time when a lot of people might be struggling quietly, hurting privately, yet smiling publicly. They're going through depression, anxiety, emotional issues that a lot of times you can miss if you don't understand the subtle signs. It's so important to deal with the underlying cause so that you deal with the actual problem and not just put a band-aid on it. I'm your host, Dr. Ivan Williams,
And I'm your co-host for today, Joanne Anderson.
and this is Kare Beyond the Prescription.
So, Dr. Williams, have you ever had a patient who came for like physical ailments and then ended up having some mental issues behind it, like anxiety, depression?
That's a good question. A lot of times patients come to the doctor not because of headache and heartache and heart attacks, but a lot of times they're actually dealing with emotional and psychological problems. People know me for counseling at the hospital. The patient comes for something that seems very simple, but might spend a little time because they're dealing with deep-seated matters. Glad that you asked. A patient I saw just last night at the hospital came and she said that she had earache. But whilst checking, there was no problem with the ear. But then she looked like she was spaced out for a bit.
Yeah.
So I asked her, what's really going on? She said that she has a lot on her mind. She feels the pressure of trying to care for her son that don't seem to be getting it right. And she also feels like her husband's not listening to her. She's a bit sad. She's avoiding going home, actually. So she turned up to the hospital, not because of the earache per se, but because she wanted a break and to avoid being hurt. She's dealing with issues of the heart and the mind. And if we're not careful as doctors, sometimes we can miss these things just to treat an earache. We send patients home. Oh, it's okay, you don't have a earache.
Right.
But we miss the actual problem. So important to pick up on these subtle cues.
Right. What's the difference between referring someone to a psychiatrist versus a psychologist?
So, in medicine, we try to differentiate between an organic cause of a mental problem, which just simply means that illness, diabetes, vitamin B12 deficiency, something that we can identify as an organic cause of a mental problem. And then we have people who might have a psychosis, which means that it's beyond an organic cause. It's a mental problem that is outside of reason, failure to live within the acceptable norms of society. So, for example, if you are having a headache and you're saying the world is dying, I would blame the headache for that, and I'll call it an organic cause,
Right.
causing you to be deluded a little bit. But if you don't have a headache and you're saying the world is dying and the sky is falling and I've not seen the sky falling and you believe it and I can't convince you otherwise, you're going to the psychiatrist.
Okay.
But when you're going to the psychologist, it would be more for emotional, for psychological support, cognitive behavioral therapy. Some of those same tools they use when they're dealing with people with psychological problems.
Okay. I do want to know because I've been with you for a while as your admin. Clarifying, please. As your admin, right?
Yes.
I know that you probably have some bad days.
Uh-huh.
How do you handle dealing with patients who are, going through their own things and probably laying their burdens on you while going through your own challenges?
I'm glad you asked that question. I have a little artistic side. So my outlet most times is I write. So I write poems. And there's a poem I wrote called I'm Tired. I'm tired. Sometimes you might have to deal with your own personal problems, and then you're also trying to help with other problems.
Right.
So we gotta be very aware of our own person and what we are going through and deal with it. And I said an outlet. You must have an outlet. When I write, I feel good that I created something and I have it written down for future. But after that, I'm good. I'm not stressed, I'm not sad, and it gives me the motivation and encouragement to keep pressing on and to help again.
Let's just see. Do you have any questions for me?
Sure.
Okay.
Now, a lot of women have, and I'm saying a lot of women because mostly women will come to the hospital or to the doctor with some sort of emotional problem, anxiety being one of the main ones.
Obviously.
And anxiety can be both conscious and subconscious. Some people turn up and they're like, what happened? And they don't know what happened. They just know that their heart is racing, their chest is tight, and they can't breathe.
That's true.
Has that ever happened to you?
Definitely. In 2023, I lost my grandfather. But before losing him, we were at the hospital quite a lot. It was during COVID time, the dreadful COVID. And I remember showing up at the hospital for him and being there asking my dad, please let me see a doctor because I felt like I needed to remove my tonsils. It was extreme for me at the time, but I thought that something was really wrong with me physically. I was shaking. Every single night I would have asthma attacks because I do have asthma.
Yeah.
But it felt like asthma attacks. And when my mom would come and give me the nebulizer, it's like it would leave for about 30 minutes and then come back. Yeah.
Because
so
it's asthma cousin. Go on.
Definitely. You feel as if you can't really breathe. Everything is tightening. And then I was like, why am I having an asthma attack? And I'm crying up the same time.
Yeah.
Like, that makes no sense.
But it makes sense if you understand what's happening. And that's why it's so important to get to separate a medical problem from a psychological or emotional problem. So in anxiety, you feel like your whole chest is tightening. You feel like you can't take a full breath.
Right.
You feel like your heart is pounding. And it just goes to show how connected the human body is. Everybody thinks it's only physical.
Right.
Your body is 3 parts. It's your body, physical. It's your soul, which is that identity part of you. It's your spirit. And if we don't deal with all 3 of those, you can miss something sometimes. And all 3 of those affect each other.
Right.
So you can be emotionally unwell and you have physical manifestations. Or you could be spiritually unwell and you have emotional manifestations that ultimately lead to physical manifestation. So you gotta be very, very careful not to ignore those things.
That's really helpful. Thanks for that.
Sure. But a part of what we're discussing too is just to let the general public know that the matters of the heart matters. Or the problem of the heart is the heart of the problem. And we can't
explain that. You can't just go past like that. You have to explain that.
It is simply saying that when we look at the emotions, because that's where a lot of problems stem from. That's where traumas linger. That's where past hurts are anchored and people don't seem to move on. If we don't look at the heart, we will miss a lot of diagnoses. We will miss a lot of solutions. And our prescription will definitely be wrong. I don't want to be that doctor that misses the right diagnosis, the underlying cause, because I've also seen where a lot of people, they get better because you hit the nail on the head. They leave the hospital or leave the office satisfied, feeling like I'm accomplished. I came for this, but I left with more than I came for. So the idea is, when I was doing my master's, if I could segue there, I learned about 3 different types of diagnoses. I learned about the clinical diagnosis, which is hypertension, diabetes, asthma, oil. I learned about the circumstantial diagnosis, and I learned about the individual diagnosis. So everybody has a diagnosis. Everybody thinks that they have a problem. That's the individual diagnosis. There's always a circumstance. I saw a patient once who, her neighbor was walking up the stairs and she fell. She had a clot in the lung. She had shortness of breath. So when she started to have shortness of breath, she thought she was having the same problem. But there's so many causes of shortness of breath. But that would be the contextual diagnosis. So in the context of what happened, for the circumstances, she believed that she has this problem. And then,
in Jamaica, we do that a lot though.
Yeah, for sure. But Medicine is not blanket treatment. I can't just throw a blanket over everybody for the same problem. It doesn't work like that. So when we look at the context, we look at the individual and the clinical diagnosis, we get a bigger and a better picture. I learned how to deal with the fears, the ideas, the concerns, and the expectations of patients. And when you address all those things, patients feel like they've really, really seen a doctor because all their needs are met. So, what am I saying? When we look at the prescription, it represents a clinical type of diagnosis. But if we're going to really and truly care for people, we got to look beyond just the clinical part and look at the emotional, the spiritual, the psychological part of their well-being and address those issues so that they can be adequately sorted out.
As a spiritual individual, because I know like you're a Christian, how do you treat with people always say, for example, that you must pray for everything and God will fix everything. But as a doctor, you have the gift of healing, you would say, right? And you have the qualifications, you have the education, the background, everything to support the fact that you are fully equipped to help someone.
Yes.
So what is your view? Is there a thin line? How can you differentiate between when it's a spiritual problem versus when God has given you the ability to help that person?
Well, I always tell people this, that God gave me the power and the ability to be able to help. And how I help is not necessarily only spiritual, because there's simple things. You come with your arm chopped off, you could pray from now till the cows come home, you ain't gonna go back. Right? And likewise, if you have a physical problem that's obvious, you can pray. I promise you, you ain't gonna go nowhere. So we have to exercise wisdom too. A lot of patients come and say, "Oh, I pray about it," and then they end up dying.
Jesus.
Because the cancer ain't go nowhere. Just saying. So we got to be very, very careful not to mix up spiritual and physical. On the spiritual side of things, if somebody clearly has an emotional, psychological, or spiritual problem, you come tell me you see some duppy in your room and the duppy bothering you and you can't sleep, that is not medicine. That is spiritual problem. So we have to deal with it. So wisdom needs to be exercised based on the presentation. And again, it's always about dealing with the underlying problem.
Okay, so back to the duppy argument. Let's talk about schizophrenia.
Right.
Because that's when you're really sick.
Lots of duppy, correct.
Okay. So do you still believe that schizophrenia is an actual diagnosis for a girl?
And I'm glad you asked that question, because I always think that schizophrenia, there's a thin line between spiritual illness and psychological illness. Very thin line. You always hear people complain about some spiritual problem when they have schizophrenia. And it makes you wonder, why are they always talking about spiritual things?
Right.
And that gives me the sense that it's not just psychological. And it's not just schizophrenia. So there must be a spiritual component. People believe in demon possession. If you read the Bible, it's there. It's a thing. And you could never show me a patient who is cutting himself, screaming every day, pulling out his hair, and just say it is a psychiatric illness. There's more to that. So again, the underlying cause. And if you deal with it the right way, you get the right outcomes.
Speaking about schizophrenia, what's a common undiagnosed issue that you see in Jamaica?
I'm glad you raised that question because I'll put it in this way. Men's health. Men's health, because people don't know this, but in Jamaica, men commit suicide more than women.
Yeah, that's true.
And you want to know why? Because men's mental health is under or even misdiagnosed, because the assumption is that men have it all together. You must be a man, you must suck it up, right? So men struggle in ways that you can't even fathom, because men have the pressure already to be a man. Provide, protect. You guys don't know how hard it is.
Why you say like that?
Because it's true.
I know.
You do?
I have a dad.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
I see the struggles.
Fair enough.
So what you should do is tell the men.
All right, so talk to the men.
Talk to the men.
So men them go to the doctor and talk, because that's really what it is. It's offloading. It's getting all of those things that you're struggling with, that you're compressing on the inside, that one day will explode like a volcano. And the explosion sometimes is that S word.
Oh gosh.
So we can't ignore it. Men need to speak. Men have a way of bottling their emotions in relationships, in everything. Men need to speak and get those feelings, the words that we don't like. We like facts, we don't like feelings. But you need to speak and get that out so that it can help moderate your reaction to different circumstances.
Awesome.
Indeed. So, again, I mean, I want to discuss a lot of things like this in our future episodes. Not just about spiritual stuff, but even the emotional stuff, which is a big area that we need to deal with for our future episodes. People need to understand that there's more to life, there's more to health. Matter of fact, to close with this, the definition for health is the complete well-being of a person, and it's not just the absence of illness. So if you don't have an illness, it doesn't mean that you're healthy. The complete well-being speaks to your emotions, physical, psychological, all those aspects. I even dare say social, financial, because if those aspects of your life, all right, you're not healthy.
Okay.
And I hope that we were able to reach you at a point where you can relate. We want to touch on topics like this moving forward because it's a sore point. It's a point that is sometimes not even addressed. We want to be able to reach you beyond the prescription, not just medically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. So see you next time right here on Kare Beyond the Prescription.
Yay! Was I supposed to say something?
No, it's fine.